Okay, so we will begin at the bottom of Nun Ches Amud Beis, 58b, and we saw a contradiction in brises. One brise had said that a bell is going to be tamei, and one said a bell is going to be tar, and the Gemara asked a contradiction, and the Gemara made a distinction about a bell, whether or not it's going to have a function if it doesn't have a clapper. And the Gemara asked, you said that one of the brises is talking about where there's no clapper, and the clapper was essentially taken out, and yet it retains its status as susceptibility to Tumah. Rashi says that it is tamei and it will remain tamei. And Abaye says, what's the reason? Because it can easily be put back in. And the Gemara challenged that we see from the scissors and we see from the plane that smooths out wood, that in those items it's only going to be susceptible to Tumah when it is actually in use as one. But when it's not in use as one, then they're two separate parts. For sure, when the clapper is out, it should be a separate part. That's what we're up to. Ela Marava. So last three words of the daf. Ela Marava. So rather, Rava says that the distinction in the brises, why one brisa says that it is that a bell is tamei for an animal, and one brisa says that it is tahor for an animal, and we said that it's talking about that the tahor one is without a bell, and by a human it says that it's going to be tamei even without a bell. Amar Rava says, it still retains its function, because even though the clapper is out, I can still use it as a symbol. I can bang it on something else and it'll make a cling, it'll make a noise. It manami am Rabbi Yezeb Rabbi Chanina hoil v'roi lakish al gabe cheres. Rabbi Yezeb Rabbi Chanina says, like what Rava just said, because you can use it by hakish al gabe cheres. It can be placed, it can be banged on top of a cheres. Now, this gets into a machlokes about anytime something is tamei and is broken down, but still can function in the manner that it originally could, or perhaps even if it can function in any manner, does it retain its kli status or not? And so we have two points. One is the halacha is that a vessel would need a whole kamotzi rimon, the size of a rimon, a pomegranate. The reason for that is that if it's smaller than that, even though it can no longer retain liquid, but it can retain fruits or produce, depending on how big or small that hole will be, it can still retain certain products. And therefore, it still works as a receptacle, and it's going to retain its tumah. Or do I over there? That's me'ein malacha rishona. It's a part of. It's like the original usage. So Rava and Rabbi Yezer Rabbi Chanina, they're saying that the reason why it's going to still be susceptible to tumah after the clapper is out, because you can still use the bell as a noisemaker. You can bang the bell against something else, and this is because you need me'ein malacha rishona. Rabbi Yochanan says, because you can use it upside down as a cup for a child. Again, it still has a function, but this is not me'in malach rishona. This is not similar to what the original was, and the Gemara is going to challenge that. The Rabbi Yochanan we see elsewhere obligates it to still be in the original usage in order for it to retain its tumah process. But just to go through the brises. So we had the first brisa that said that for an animal, a bell is not susceptible to tumah, and for a human, it is susceptible to tumah. And they're both talking about without the clapper. For the animal, it's going to be susceptible, and it's not susceptible to tumah without the clapper because it's not a vessel. It's not an adornment. It doesn't have any function that way, and it doesn't have the clapper. For a human, it's going to be susceptible to tumah even without the clapper because it's a tachshit, it's a pendant on it around its neck. The second brisa, which said that for an animal it's going to be tameh, that's talking about that it has the clapper, as we said earlier, and for children it's going to be tahor if it has no clapper, because it's not a complete vessel, and it's going to be tameh if the clapper was put in, and so it was once originally a vessel, and now the clapper has been removed. It'll retain its susceptibility for tumah, or its tumah process, and that's a machlokes and Rashi Tues here, which we won't get into. But it'll either be tameh and retain its tumah, or retain its susceptibility to tumah, on account of that. Even though that it lost its clapper, but it still can either, as Rabbi Yochanan says in the end of this Gemara, in the third opinion we saw, which is that it's susceptible to tumah on account of that you can still use it as a cup. And the first two, Rava and Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina, they say that because you can bang it on a rock, and so therefore it's still susceptible to tumah on account of that it has its original function in some manner. You could still, even though the clapper is gone, you could still use it in a certain way by banging it against something else like a cymbal. So now the Gemara is going to challenge Rabbi Yochanan, the Gemara that we said Rabbi Yochanan holds that something that was a vessel, a bell that had a clapper, and it's lost its susceptibility, it lost the clapper, so it doesn't have its original function. But nevertheless, I can use it as something else. I can drink from it, or have a child drink from it. So I can use it as a cup. Therefore, it retains its tumah or susceptibility to it, and it retains the status it had before, because it's still enough of a vessel. The Gemara says, is that true? Rabbi Yochanan doesn't require, in order for it to retain its tumah status, to retain some function similar to the original function, but we learned. Kol kli asher yeshev alav. We know that there are certain tumas that have a tumas midras, or mishkav, or moshav. Tumah midras is pressure. Mishkav and moshav are when it sleeps on something or sits on something, which the mattress is beneath that person, or the chair and what's beneath the chair would be susceptible, would be tameh from that tumah. So by the Zav it says, and any kli asher yeshev alav, which will sit, future tense, on it. So yeshev alav is that really not what you'd expect the Torah to say. Asher yoshev alav or yashav alav, it sat on or is sitting on. Why asher yeshev? It will sit. So the Gemara explains the reason is because yachal kafa seah v'yashav alav, kafa tarkev v'yashav alav. He takes a bucket that is a functional bucket for measuring produce in the field, whether it's a saw bucket or a half saw bucket. Yay, tummy. Well, it sat on that. It should be tummy. It's something that it's meant to be sitting on, that he will be able to continue sitting on it. Therefore, it tells us that it has to be something that is miyuchad. It is specifically made for sitting. As opposed to this bucket, that at some point someone's going to come to him and say, "You're sitting on the bucket. We need. Please get up." So therefore, it's not something yeshev. It's not something that he will be available to him for sitting for the future. He may be able to sit on it for now, and not for the future. And that's what the Torah is saying when it says asher yeshev alav. It has to be designated for sitting, where no one's going to tell him to get up. But if it's designated for something else, it's a vessel, that's a bucket, it's a barrel, and he's sitting on it, and somebody at any moment can come up and say, "We need that. Please get up." So that's not a yeshiv alav, and therefore it's not going to receive the tumah of yeshiva, of moshav. So Rabbi Lazar Eimer b'midrasa is Eimer ma'amad v'nasim l'achteinu. By midras, that's what we say. It's going to be tamei, and we say amod v'nasa malachtenu. Ve'ein omrim b'tamei meis amod v'nasa malachtenu. But by a tamei meis, we don't say, look, this vessel is not in the function that it's supposed to be, and therefore it's not going to become tummy. No, it became into contact to tumah of a mace. It's going to be susceptible to tumah. It's only in midras that we say, look, it's not going to be. This is not what it's meant to be used as, and eventually someone's going to tell him to get off of the bucket, and therefore it's not going to be susceptible to tumah on account of that. We tell him, "Amoid v'nasa malachtenu, get up. We need to use the bucket." Rabbi Yochanan says, "Af betamei meis amoid v'nasa malachtenu," and Rabbi Yochanan says that even in by tamei meis, if it's not the classic use of this bucket, then we tell him it's not going to be susceptible to tumah. It has to be that it's being used in the manner that it was intended to be sitting on. But if it's not in the use that it was intended to be used, it's not going to be susceptible. It's not going to become tamei meis. And therefore, now Rashi points out that obviously Rabbi Yochanan is now talking about a full chair, a full bucket, a full barrel, because if that's the case, it would be susceptible to tumah because it's a vessel. Rashi brings the pasuk v'hiza al oil v'al kol hakelim, that we see that by oil amaze, anything that's in the house is going to be susceptible to tumah. All buckets, it doesn't. All vessels, it doesn't have to be something that is meant for the function of the mace. So it must be that what we're talking about is, Rabbi Yochanan is talking about, is a vessel that lost its function, and there he says it's only going to be susceptible to tumah if it's still within its original function. So a broken chair that he's sitting on, or something like that. But a barrel that is being used, that is broken and is not susceptible to tumah, but is being used as a chair, but somebody can say, get up and do the work. In other words, it's not what it's meant for, that will not be susceptible to tumah. So by tamei midras, any vessel, even a complete vessel, that's not being used in a manner that it's meant to be used, meaning it's being sat on, somebody can say, please get up, we need a bucket. And so therefore the Torah, when it says, Yeshev alav, the vessel that he will sit on will become tamei. This is not going to be something that he will sit on, because at any moment he could be asked to get up and off the chair, the barrel, and therefore it's not going to become tamei of moshav, of something that the zav sits on. However, in regards to tamei meis, obviously any vessel is susceptible to tumah of a mace, but if it's broken, if it's not in its original use, the Tanna Kama says still it's going to be tamei. And Rabbi Yochanan says it no longer will have its tumah on account of that we say to him, meaning it has to retain its original functionality, otherwise it's not. Yes,
are we saying that if there's a keli that became tamei meis, and then it broke, that it loses its tumah, it's the pieces of the broken vessel are no longer tamei, or does it have to be like once it's tamei, it's tamei? You can't break it after it's tamei and say now it's not tamei anymore.
No, for sure. That's the way vessels become. That's a way the vessels become tar, is when they lose their original, when they're broken, and they lose their original functionality. And Rabbi Yochanan says any original function, and the Chachamim are saying that no, it has to lose all function. As long as it still has a use, it's going to retain its tumah.
And is it individual? In other words, you say, you could still use that for that. He said, I'm not going to use it for that.
Well, it's somewhat individual. We saw in regards to, let's say, a torn piece of garment, that we say it's 3 finger breadths by 3 finger breadths for a poor person, and 3 tefachim by 3 tefachim for a rich person, because rich people use kerchiefs, they don't use patches, and poor people use patches, and so there's a distinction. But it's not individual in the sense of I can say, well, yeah, I don't care about that. I don't care. It could be a 4 foot by 4 foot piece of silk, but I'm not sewing. Nobody in my family is going to sew anything for me, so we're just going to toss it. I don't think it works completely subjective, but there is a subjectivity to it in some what's typical for such people and what's normal. In any case, so the point of the matter is that Rabbi Yochanan in our halacha says that if the clapper is removed of a bell, it's gonna still tamei or susceptible to tumah on account of that a child can drink from it. And over here, in regards to tumei meis, by Amod v'nasa malachtenu, get up and we'll use we need to use the barrel, the bucket. Rabbi Yochanan says it has to have some sort of original functionality. So why by the bell did Rava and Rabbi Yosef or Chanina say that it has to be that you can bang it against something so it still has its original function? And Rabbi Yochanan says even not original function, even if you could just feed a child with it. And over here, it seems like it has to have its original function. So Gemara says, Eipach kamaisa. Yep, the first halacha we have to switch around. It's really Rabbi Yosef or Chanina who said that the child can drink from it. Rabbi Yochanan said that it's going to be tamei on account of that you can bang it against another item and it'll clank. So who tells you to switch the first halacha, which is our issue of the bell? Maybe switch the second one in regards to getting off the barrel. No, because we know from elsewhere, we have a third source where Rabbi Yochanan seems to say that it has to retain its original function, or somewhat of the original function. The Tanan we learned, Sandal shabehema shel mateches tami. The horseshoes that they had went up over the hoof as well, so it was somewhat of a receptacle. And so they have this shoe that would go on an animal. If it's made of metal, it's susceptible to tumah. So Gemara says, what function, if it's not on the foot of the animal, what function does it have? Now, so over here, it should be considered a non-functioning vessel, even though it has a receptacle, but it's made to receive feet of animals, and it doesn't hooves. It doesn't have that in it, so it's a broken vessel. It's a non-usable vessel. The Gemara says, so the first opinion says, Rav says, because if it falls off the animal in the battlefield, you can drink some water, because you'll use anything in order to drink. You got to run. Rabbi Chanina says that you can take oils and anoint yourself with it. You got chapped skin. You can use it for that. Rabbi that you can, when you're running from the battlefield, it can be used to protect your feet from thorns and thistles. Now, my ben Rav Rabbi Chanina. So why did Rav say water in the battlefield and Rabbi Chanina said oil in the battlefield? The difference is that it's usually disgusting, and if it's disgusting, you wouldn't want to drink from it. So Rabbi Chanina actually does not consider it a usable vessel for drinking. So therefore, he says it's only for dry skin. You're going to put your oil on it and smear it. And vice versa. Rabbi Chanina says oil. Rabbi says, what are you talking about? Who's in a battlefield and worried about putting oils on themselves to make themselves more comfortable? Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Chanina, the Yakir, and between Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Chanina says, I don't agree with Rabbi Yochanan on account of that it's too heavy. And when you're running from the battlefield, you can't be busy with a piece of metal on your feet in order to protect yourself from thorns and thistles. And so each one has a reason why they think the other one is not a viable option as a functional use of the vessel. But what we do see is that Rabbi Yochanan, in his coming up with a functionality that is retained of this vessel, it's similar to what it was originally intended. A shoe protecting the feet in the battlefield. So we see that Rabbi Yochanan elsewhere also is looking for the function of the vessel to be similar to what it was originally functional as in order to retain its tumah status. So too here, by the bell, we're going to say that we're going to switch it around. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina is the one that says that you can, it retains its tumah on account of that you can feed a child, give a child to drink from this as a cup. And Rabbi Yochanan says no, since it can still make sound by banging it against something, because in order to retain its tumah, it's required that it retains a function similar to its original function. The Mishnah said another item that women cannot go out with is an ir shel zav, a golden city. What is a golden city? My be ir shel zav. So Rabbi Bachana, Rabbi Yochanan named Rabbi Yochanan Yerushalayim the Dava, a tiara that represented Yerushalayim in gold. And we turned to Nun Tesamid base. Like Rabbi Akiva made for his wife Rachel, as Gemara tells his story in Nedarim, that she married him taking a chance, even though that he was an unlearned a shepherd. She believed that he'd be able to, she'd be able to change, and he did indeed. But her father, in the meantime, who was very wealthy, Kal Savua, had written her off, and eventually. And she lived in terrible poverty while he became a scholar, and eventually, when he was able to, and her father-in-law accepted him, bought her this essentially crown, this tiara of Yerushalayim of gold. Tanrabanan, leteitze isha be'ir shel zav im yatzach hayavas chatas de Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says not only is a woman not allowed to walk out with this on her head, but if she did, if she's carrying, it's not a normal thing to wear, and therefore you walk out with it, it's going to be considered a masai, something that you're carrying, and it's a biblical prohibition. It's a chayv chatas, even though she's wearing it. It's not a normal thing to wear. There's a chatas to be brought. It's a sin, a da'oraisa. Don't go out with it. But if you did, Rabbi Eliezer Omer. However, Rabbi Eliezer says she's allowed to walk out with it, no problem. So what's the machlokes based on? Rabbi Meir savar masoyu. Rabbi Meir says that's not a normal thing to wear. That's not something worn. It's not a proper jewelry. It's a masoy. It's you're carrying it, and so there's a chatas. The Torah doesn't allow carrying on Shabbos. You did. You have to bring a chatas offering. Rabbanan sabri tachshetu, and the Rabbanan say no. It's an adornment. It's a garment to be worn, and therefore there's no biblical prohibition. However, there is a rabbinic prohibition to wear it because you may take it off to show to your friends. But dilma shalfi machvi. And if you take it off to show to your friends, you may end up walking a few feet with it, and it may be dalad amas. So that's a Torah prohibition, and so in order to save the Torah prohibition, you're not allowed to. You're not allowed to do it. And maybe you're going to carry it. Rabbi Eliezer says, "Savar commander man darkela mepak beers shelzov." Who wears such a golden tiara? Isha Chashuva, a honorable, respectable woman is going to wear this. It's not just some child. And this is an honorable person. But Isha Chashuva le'mishalva machvi. A respectable woman is not going to take her tiara off in the street to show to friends. So there's no concern that maybe they're going to carry it. Anybody that's wearing an ear shows off, you don't have to be worried about her taking it off. Similarly, we see about a kalila, which is a forehead type of tiara, a forehead band with jewelry on it, or it could be made of gold. So kalila Rav Asar v'Shmuel Shari. Rav said it's prohibited to go out with it, and Shmuel said it's permissible. So So in this first version, it's going to say that the ones made of solid gold, it has a golden, it's just like a golden plate on the forehead. Everybody says it's going to be prohibited because it's so beautiful. You may take it off and show it to a friend. Keep pligi the arukta. The only machlokas is in regards to a ribbon on the forehead, even if it has some pendants hanging from it on the side, like at the cheeks, like we saw the other day. But the ribbon itself on the forehead is going to be less beautiful, and therefore, even though that it has other adornments on it, she's not likely to take it off. Masava nischa iker, or masava rukta iker. One says that the golden plate is the main, and therefore she may take it off to show that part as well. And the other says no, that since it's not the golden plate, and she's not likely to take it off to show to her friends.
Why wouldn't it be the same teretz as it was for the ear shel zahav?
The next opinion says that. Rav Ashi masni lekula. Rav Ashi says the machlokas is in more lenient. Darukta the kulam lepligi the shari. If it's just of the ribbon of the cloth, everybody agrees that's permissible because they're not going to take that off because that's not as beautiful as it can be. It's not the real thing. Keep pligi anischa. But the machlokas is about a golden plate. The Marasavar Dilma Shalfim Machve. One says, well, you can't wear it because maybe she's going to take it off or show it to her friends. And then she's going to end up carrying. And the other says, no, who wears such a garment? It's an honorable, respectable woman. And Isha Chashuva is not going to take it off in the street to show. So Michael is asking, wait, 1 second. So we just saw the machlokas between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Meir. Why we have the same machlokas here? Obviously, the Ir Shel Zav is an exquisite, very expensive item. That is a higher level of like Isha Chashuva. The people that have that are very unique. There's only a few people that have that. But forehead tiaras, a forehead jewelry was not uncommon in those days to have a ribbon along your forehead and from it some pendants or something around your forehead, a chain around your head that sat in the middle of your forehead. That was a type of jewelry that they had. It was more common. And the question is, and that's what this machlok is between the Amoraim or Rav and Shmuel, is whether or not it has the same level of Ir Shel Zav. Just as by Ir Shel Zav, Rabbi Eliezer says, no, this person is not going to take it off because who wears it? Isha Chashuva. Isha Chashuva is not going to take it off. Whereas the Chacham say, no, still there's a concern even there. A kalila is clearly a lesser degree of Isha Chashuva, of a respectable woman. Anybody really, even a lesser person could wear, anybody wears it, but even the golden plate, there are more of those than there are of wearing the Ir Shel Zav. And so in each one of these, it becomes a machlokas whether or not we're concerned that she's going to carry it, take it off in the street, carry it, and that's going to be an issue. Amalei Rav Shmuel bar Chana le Rav Yosef beferish amis la mishmei de Rav kalila shari. Rav clearly said that a kalila, this forehead jewel, this crown, the tiara on the forehead, is going to be permissible. Is there a word for that necklace that goes around the head and sits on the forehead? You don't all have to answer at once, and if you're answering while you're muted, nobody will know.
Our scroll says it's a tiara.
All right, there you go.
Yeah, and Stanzals just leaves it as a kalila. He doesn't even translate it.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah. Amrule l'Rav, it was told to Rav, Asa Gabra Rabba Aricha l'Nahardo umitla v'dorish kalila shari. There was a tall limping person came to Naharda, and he said a drash that kalila is permissible on Shabbos. In other words, that we're not concerned she's going to take it off, or if it's either because it's the material one, and as she wouldn't take it off, or it's because it's the golden one, but the type of person to wear it is not likely to take it off. And in any case, he said Amar. So Rav said, "Man gavra Rabba Aricha." Who's this? Who would be a tall person? The itla that's also limping. Oh, must be Levi. Must be Levi. Shmamina nach nafshe the Rabbi Afes. V'Yosef Rabbi Chanina Beresha. Must be the Rabbi Afes, who was a student of Rebbe, had passed away, and Rabbi Chanina became the head of the academy. And Levi no longer had a chavrusa to study with and no one to learn under, so he came to Bavel. So even though that Levi and Rabbi Chanina had been studying together, and Rabbi Apis was the head of the academy when Rav came to Eretz Yisrael, so Rav was a student of Rebbe, and he came to Bavel. Shmuel was also a student, but he came earlier, and Rav, at a later age, came in a later part of his life, came, and he headed the academy of Surah. Levi, who was younger, had studied with Rabbi Chanina, and they were both also students. And now that Rabbi Chanina is the head of the academy, must be that Rabbi Afis had passed away. And that's why Levi had nowhere to be, so he came to Bavel. So he came here. So Gemara says, "V'dilma nach nafshe the Rabbi Chanina." How did Rav know that Rabbi Chanina is the one that became the head of the academy and Rabbi Afis had passed away? Maybe it's the other way around. Maybe Rabbi Apis is still alive and Rabbi Chanina passed away, and so Levi had no chavrusa left. So the Gemara explains that he knew this on account of Im Isa the Rabbi Chanina shachiv Levi le Rabbi Apis mechaf avakaifle. Levi for sure considered Rabbi Apis to be his superior and his senior, and if Rabbi Apis was still alive, even though that Levi was learning with Rabbi Chanina, and was a senior student, if he would have been a student, he still would have gone back to the academy to learn under Rabbi Apis. The only reason that he would have come was because Rabbi Apis had passed away. Now Rabbi Chanina is the head of the academy, and Levi accepting Rabbi Chanina, who was his colleague, as the head of the academy and his superior, that would not have worked well. And besides, if Rabbi Apis is still alive and Rabbi Chanina would have passed away, that would have meant that Rabbi Chanina never became the head of the academy, and that couldn't be the Chiyavakanicha Nafshe the Rebbe, because when Rabbi Yehuda Anasi was on his deathbed, and Rav remembered that he had said, Amar Chanina Rabbi Chama Yosef Barosh, that Chanina Rabbi Chama is going to be the head of the academy. And even though Rabbi Apis was head first, but he knew that Rabbi Chanina is going to outlive Rabbi Apis and end up being the head of the academy, because Rebbe said so on his deathbed. And it says in the pasuk, but tzaddikim, in regards to tzaddikim, mesigzar omer veyakim lach, that what they say is a command, is a decree, and Hashem will establish it for them. And since the Rebbe had said so, it's Hashem would not have allowed his words not to come to fruition. And since he said that Levi is going to be the head of the academy, since he said that Rabbi Hanina is going to be the head of the academy, he knew that Rabbi Apis must have passed away. Levi, being the chavrusa of Rabbi Hanina, left on account of that he no longer had a chavrusa, and he had a equal as the head of the academy, and so it's best that he's not there, and he's rather to seek out where to go teach. So Darash Levi ben Arda Kalila Shari. So the Gemara goes back to the original statement after establishing what Rav figured out was going on in Eretz Yisrael without getting the news. He figured it out based on the fact that someone reported that a tall, limping person had come and started teaching in Naharda. So Darash Levi ben Arda Kalila Shari. So he announced indeed that the Kalila is permissible. As a result of that, Nafik Esther V'Abba Kalila Makula Naharda. Throughout Naharda, 24 women walked out that Shabbos with a Kalila on their head. Darash Rabbi Baravua ben Mechuzah. Similarly, Rabbi Baravua announced such a halacha in Mechuzah, Kalila Shari. Manafku Tamni Sari Kalila Michadam Avua. From one courtyard, from one alleyway, 18 women walked out with a Kalila. So people were excited about this, about finding out that it was mutter to wear, and they actually were going out dressed beautifully on Shabbos. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav Shmuel, Amar Shmuel, in the name of Shmuel, Kamra Shari. He said that Kamra is permissible. Now, this Kamra is a type of belt that was very chashuv, very honorable belt, whether it was made out of gold or was a leather piece that had some gold on it. Either way, it was considered something special. So Kamra Shari, and he said that this was permissible for someone to walk out with. Some say he's talking about the material one, meaning the leather one. Va'amar Rav Safra midi dehava a talis mushedes, similar to a golden talis. So if you have a talis that really is just it's a garment, and it has on it some golden adornments on it. So even though that it has this gold on it, where you should be concerned that somebody will take it off to show it, but the person's not going to take off a garment to show it. Maybe a jewel, maybe a ring, a pendant, but you're not going to take off a garment or a belt, and therefore there's no concern of anybody taking it off. And some say no. He's talking about the golden one. The golden one, who wears that? That's it's only someone honorable, and he wouldn't take it off in the street. Like the belt of kings, that it's all made of a golden plate, and that's beautiful, and you wouldn't take it off in the street. And really, even though that we say that it has to be an appropriate garment for that group of people, if it's not inappropriate for you to wear this kind of jewelry, so then it shouldn't be considered jewelry. It's a maso if this is not on the level that you're at. So Rashi says, as he quotes from the Gemara later, that Kol Yisrael b'nei Melachim Ru'uyim Lo. Since all children of Yisrael are kings, they're princes, and as such, this is an appropriate garment, even if in their socioeconomic status they may not be worthy of this. But as a Jew celebrating Shabbos, it's appropriate to walk out that way. there are many people that for Shabbos dress well beyond what they could, what their socioeconomic status would allow for. But because they're Shabbos and they are B'nai Malachim, and as B'nai Malachim, you wear as princes on Shabbos, you wear special clothing. So even if they're wearing this garment that seems a little bit beyond their scale, it is considered a garment, and then we're not concerned they're going to take it off because it's a belt. It's something in the street you're not going to take off. Amalei and Ravina Ravashi, Kamra. What happens if you actually have this golden plate or this expensive belt, this extra belt over a proper belt? He's saying a belt over a belt, and that of course is not going to count because that's a masa. It has no function, and you may actually take it off because your garment, it's not considered a garment, and your belt you have a functioning belt beneath that, so you may actually take it off, and that for sure, since it's one over the other, it's going to be considered a garment. Now Rashi has two versions here. He brings from two of his teachers different interpretations of whether or not it's because it's a masui and therefore it's prohibited. Or actually it's going to be permitted on account of that it's still beautiful, even though that it's two belts, it's going to be permissible. Rashi likes his first interpretation. And he says the interpretation of that it's prohibited because it's a maso. That's not a normal thing to wear one belt over another belt. And even though that the outer belt is some special garment that's beautiful, it has no function at all as a belt, and it's going to be a maso. Amar Ravashi, Hai Resuka, Isle Pamrachaise Shari, Ve'iloi Aser. If you have a leather belt, which is essentially a strip of leather, if it has the strands at the end that you can tie it with, it's going to be permissible, and if not, it's going to be prohibited because it's not going to be a normal thing to wear, and it may come off, and you may end up carrying it. The Mishnah said, additionally, something that cannot be worn is a katla. What is this katla? My katla, manke pari, menakta pari. So this is it has a drawstring kind of pants. And that but it's basically we talked about it the other day. It has a string that's tied around. It has this. It's like a ruffle that goes over the chest, and it has a band that goes around the neck, and it's made pretty tight in order to show that the person is more fleshy. Nizamim. What kind of nezem ring? And when it says nizmei af, that's she can wear the nose ring and the katla because these would not be taken off. However, an earring she can wear because she's not going to take it off. A nose ring she would take off to show her friends, and therefore it's going to be prohibited. Why an earring? So Rashi says earrings were permissible to be worn and not difficult to take off because their head covering would go over their ears. It would make it hard for them to take their earring off, and it would not, and therefore would not be concerned that they're going to take it off because it's hard to take off and hard to put back on. But the nose ring was easy to take off and on, and so therefore there was a concern that they would take it off. And also not a ring that doesn't have a signet. But if it has a signet, then not only is it going to be prohibited, but it is actually going to be chayiv, meaning it's going to be a Torah prohibition, because that's not even a jewelry. That's not even meant to be worn. It's not jewelry. It actually is just a masoi. You're carrying something that has a functional use, and it has no function on Shabbos, and so you're carrying it. Alma lav tachshatu, which tells us that it's not intended as jewelry and would be chayiv. So tomorrow we'll continue with the signet ring to see what function is the signet ring versus the ring itself, and which one is the main, and continue that with carrying. Just to reiterate the point that we said earlier in the Mishnah from Tues, all of these apply to when it is likely and it is typical for people to take it off. Nowadays, you see people that wear rings in the street. That's because it is not common to take it off. Or other pieces of jewelry like earrings. Rashi says earrings are permissible on account of because it's too difficult to take off. But a single woman today that doesn't cover her hair and has easy access, or even if they cover their hair and they have easy access to their earring, of course, then it should be usher to take off. But nevertheless, it's permissible. Obviously, as we said before, isha chashuva, a woman who is not likely to take it off on account of the status of who they are allowed to wear it. Same over here. Anything that functionally, that typically someone would not take off in the street is therefore going to be permissible on account of that it's not that there's no concern of carrying it. It's only something that it is typical and likely to remove in the street. That's where the halacha is. If there's no eruv, you can't go out with it. Maybe you're going to take it off. Such as the discussion that I mentioned, that it applies to, let's say, gloves or anything of the like.
I thought jewelry in general you're not allowed to wear, but we don't. So for men, it's that we don't wear jewelry, and that for women, we just don't mention it. We don't tell them not to do it. It's true, you're not supposed to wear jewelry, but we don't tell them not to.
No. So if you look at the Tues on the Mishnah, Tues on the Mishnah says clearly the reason is but if there's no concern that you're going to take it off, there's no problem. And anything that's jewelry that's common to be worn and is nice, you're allowed to wear it. And men do wear jewelry today. So, right, if men were not typically wearing that kind of jewelry, it would be usher to wear. But any jewelry in any time that is common to be worn, so that's permissible to be worn. It's a beged. Jewelry is a kind of garment, and that's permissible.
I just thought, I think in the Mishnah Berurah, though, doesn't he say something like that?
Yeah, if it was not the common thing to do, or there was a concern they would take it off. But mi'ikr adin, today it's permissible because they don't wear it. Because we wear jewelry. Men wear watches. Men wear rings. Men there are pieces of jewelry that men wear. That's common. A and B. It's not a masli. It's typical. Nobody takes it off. It's not likely for someone to take off their ring to show it to someone. They may do this and show them their hand, but they're not going to take it off. All right, Kiyashika.